Great. So at this time, a quick intro on TrueSky. It's a corporate performance management solution that gives companies control of the budgeting, planning, and forecasting process. TrueSky reduces just a drudgery of the budgeting process so companies can spend more time on high-value tasks like analysis and strategy. So at this time, I'm going to pass the controls to George Braun, who's president of TrueSky, for today's presentation. All yours, George.
Okay, good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining our presentation. What I'm going to do today is just going to give you a high-level overview of our product, just to give you a feel for what we do, and then if you are interested, then we can pursue things a little bit further. Everybody can hear me okay? I'm assuming if there's any issues, just put it in the chat box and we'll try and address it. So just to get started here. Okay. So before we start, why do you need an application? I think most people out there are using Excel for budgeting, planning, and forecasting. And although Excel is a great tool, it's very powerful, it's very flexible. You can pretty well model any process. It's got a great presentation layer and a high user adoption. It's really not great for budgeting. And the reasons for that is it's not a database. There's a lot of manual work that needs to be done. There's no workflow. There's no audit trails, there's no version controls, there's a lot of spreadsheets floating around, everything's kind of moving all over the place. If anybody makes a change, the spreadsheet breaks, and then when you start to merge everything together, it becomes a huge challenge. So most people are actually spending most of the time just managing the process as opposed to actually spending time analyzing, and working with the budget to make sure that it's helping your business move forward. The other thing with Excel is there's 90% of all spreadsheets out there contain errors. And there's been all kinds of studies around this, and they usually come back around the same number. And sometimes they're very significant, and sometimes they're very simple errors, just a transposition or a copy and paste error or putting in a wrong formula or something like that. And then if you start entering multiple people into the budgeting process and you start merging spreadsheets, the potential for errors goes up exponentially. So we find a lot of people are just most of the time either not finding the errors or spending a lot of time troubleshooting and spending time trying to find errors in their spreadsheets. So with that, we decided to build TrueSky, and really TrueSky was built to help clients focus on the high value items of budgeting as opposed to what we call the drudgery, which is the whole admin process of the budgeting process. So with that in mind, we basically looked at 3 different user types. So we've got our contributors. And these are the people that enter the budget, kind of work with the budget day to day. And for them, we wanted to make it as easy as possible to get in and out of the budgeting process. Most people don't enjoy budgeting, so the easier you make it for them, the better. For the finance group, we wanted to make sure that we minimize administration, increase the quality, and really allow them to control the whole process. Finance should be able to manage the whole system. And then for the decision makers, we wanted to make sure they got meaningful information, reduce the risk, be able to manage a business, and at the end of the day, avoid any surprises. So with that, we basically had 3 different pillars when we built TrueSky. The first one is one to leverage Excel. Most of you guys are out there using Excel, and it is a great tool. So we wanted to leverage all the good stuff from Excel, but we wanted to make sure that we plugged all the holes where Excel has weaknesses for budgeting. As I mentioned earlier, Excel has very rapid user adoption. Since everybody knows how to use it, there's minimal training. It's got a lot of functionality. It's easy to use. And what we've done is we've added a whole bunch of enhancements from TrueSky to make Excel even more powerful for the budgeting process. We also wanted to empower the finance group. So for the finance group, we wanted to make sure that everything's centralized. Everything's in a central database. We wanted to make sure that we have audit trails of everything that ever happened. Wanted to make sure we have data and application security. So finance should be able to control all the security, who sees what they have access to. We wanted to have automatic real-time merging, so the whole merging process goes away. We also wanted to make sure we integrate to ERP systems. So we've got very strong integrations to X3 and Sage 300. We're actually on the price list for both products, and we're kind of like the chosen tool for Sage for budgeting. We also have this concept called build once design, which means is we can create one template and depending on your organization, if you've got multiple departments, divisions, branches, and so forth, we can create one template and roll that out to multiple people and have our system dynamically create the views for them, depending on the security and what they have access to. Okay. And finally, we want to facilitate knowledge. So we want to make sure we can get as many people involved in the budgeting process as possible. The closer you are to the action, the better the quality of the numbers. The people that are kind of at the trenches know what's going on better, and they can provide you with better information. We want to make sure we captured not just qualitative, but also quantitative information. So not just the numbers, but the reason behind the numbers. Allow you to do deep dive analysis to be able to drill down and see whatever information you need. We want to make sure we increase the accuracy of everything. As we mentioned before, there's a lot of challenges with Excel as far as, the accuracy. And we wanted to make sure we provide you with decision level information. So we want to make sure that the executives have whatever information they need to make the decisions to move the business forward. What can TrueSky do for you? So TrueSky is a full-blown, what we call CPM, so it's corporate performance management solution, which means we do budgeting, planning, and forecasting, and pretty well for any model, whether it's a financial model, compensation, sales and revenue, expense management, operational budgets, capital expenditure budget, project budgets, production inventory, and so forth. We also have a whole reporting engine and dashboarding engine. So we can do consolidated budgets. We can create presentation quality financial statements, whether they're income statements, balance sheets, cash flows, or pretty well any kind of financial report that you need. We can create, whatever budget to actual variances that you require, as well as we can create all kinds of KPIs and dashboards. Okay. So with that, what we're going to do is I'm just going to pop over to my presentation. And again, if you have any questions, you can just put them in the chat box and I'll try and address them after the presentation. So can everybody see my Excel?
Yes.
Okay, so as I mentioned, what we wanted to do was to leverage Excel as much as possible. And what we did is when a user goes into the system, they basically go into the regular Excel, and we added a tab called TrueSky. Once we go into the TrueSky tab, we basically take control over everything. So in our world, there's no spreadsheets moving around or anything like that. Just the user opens up Excel, and if they have access to our tool, they'll have this tab called TrueSky, and they'll go what we call into their hub. And the hub is basically the place where we start to spoon feed them on what they need to do. So we basically roll out assignments to them. So in my scenario here, as this user, I've got certain assignments. I've got some admin tasks. So I've got some capital expenditures that I need to do and some departmental allocations. I've got some things from my annual budget cycle. So I've got to do some office expenses and some travel expenses. I've got some project budgeting, and I've got some reforecasting and sales forecasting, as well as I've got some reports that are being rolled out to me. So I've got some dashboards and some financial statements. And templates really is just more for the administrator. This is for somebody that's going to administer the system. So most users are either going to see assignments, reports, or a combination of either or. So we can have just report-only users, or we can have people that just do assignments. So I'm just going to go to my assignments tab, and I'm going to go into my office expenses. And from here, we start taking things over. So we basically start to control, when the budget starts, when the budget ends. We've got multiple levels, which means we've got a very sophisticated workflow engine in the background to kind of route the templates around if we need to for approvals and so forth. So basically, I've just launched my template. And the first thing we do is we provide instructions. So typically in our first tab, we've got instructions. So in this scenario, we basically tell people, you're going to navigate to the worksheet entitled Input. We're going to enter our values in the yellow shaded cells, and we don't want any increases over 20% over last year. Again, people, usually budget either, yearly, quarterly. Some people budget monthly. So we want to provide instructions with every template on how they need to fill out that template. So I'm just going to go over here to my office expenses, and then here's my template. So the system's defined template, and over here I've got my filters, or we call these filters or dimensions, or whatever variables you want to be able to budget on. So in my scenario here, I'm budgeting on locations, and if I click on locations, it'll give me a listing of all the locations that we have access to. And here's where I can actually start doing roll-ups. So I can kind of roll things up. I can take my Vancouver warehouse, my Vancouver office, and roll it up into my BC, or I can take, BC, Nova Scotia, Quebec, and Ontario and roll it up into Canada, or I can kind of roll things up into North America. So this is how we basically do our consolidations. We basically select from our tree what we want to roll up into what, and the system will automatically aggregate it for us, or we can show this, column by column. So we can say, okay, we want, department 1 in column 1, department 2 in column 2, and so forth. So you've got a lot of flexibility, how you want to merge things, how you want to roll them up. And again, depending on the user security, they will only see the departments, divisions, locations, that they're allowed to see. If I look at my departments, it'll give me a listing of the departments that I have access to. Again, as this user, I've got access to these departments, but if I only had access to one, I would only see one. So now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to retrieve my data. And our filters are completely configurable. So we can define different filters depending on what we're trying to budget for. So for budgeting for compensation, then we would have, employees, departments, roles and so forth, as opposed to locations and departments. We also have the ability to handle multiple currencies, and we also can handle multiple languages. Okay, so right now my system's gone ahead and generated my template for me. And again, this is user specific, so depending on the GL accounts you have access to, automatically roll them out. If I belong to a certain department, that's all it's going to show me. So right now I'm doing my expenses for my Seattle office, for my corporate department. And basically what I have here is Excel. So now as a user, I'm working in Excel. So if I want to go and expand this out, I can see, 12 columns across. At the top, I've got my actuals, my variances and so forth. So we can build these templates, in whatever format you like. Colors, fonts, anything like that is controlled by you. So everything is configurable. And as an end user, I'm just going to allow them to enter information in the yellow shaded cells. Anything that's grayed out, they can't enter information. So we're starting to really control what they can do. So I'm just going to enter some information here, just enter numbers. And basically I'm in Excel and I've got the ability to take advantage of all my Excel functionality, whether it's my, drag and drop thing, copy and paste. However I want to enter data, I can do that. If I need to enter formulas, I can just enter a formula, and I can say, take this cell plus this cell, and I'm done. Okay. So as the end user experiences Excel, they have access to pretty well most of the functionality that Excel has. As far as TrueSky is concerned, all we really care about is what's in every cell. What is the number that's in there? So that's what's going to go into our database. So as soon as we save our data, automatically goes in there, and it's available to be seen by other people, or it's all already merged if we're trying to consolidate information. Okay. Once we have our data in there, we've got a whole bunch of additional tools to make budgeting easier. So I'm just going to go up here to my data tools, and our data tools allow us to manipulate our data. A lot of times when you're doing budgeting, you want to take certain numbers. Let's say, I want to take, these numbers here, and I want to increase them by a certain amount, whether it's an even amount, it's a certain value, or it's a percentage. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take those numbers and increase them by 10%. I just basically have to go ahead and increase them, and the numbers go up, or I can just start to decrease them, and the numbers go down. Okay. We've also got the ability in our data tools to create other things. We can create a whole bunch of different scenarios for seasonality. So various businesses have different seasonality levels, then we can define that. We can create certain trends. We can also go and take a look at, say, take a trend based on last year's numbers, and automatically fill them in for me. So rather than dividing a number by 12, I can take a look and say, okay, my numbers last year were 25,000. This year, I'm going to make it 30,000. And I want the same ratio as I had last year to go through there. Automatically will go through and it'll create it for me. So it's as easy as that for an end user to start to take advantage of some of the functionality that we have. You'll also notice certain things start to change colors as we enter data. And these are visual cues to make sure that the data entered is appropriate. So in my scenario here, if you remember, when we opened up our instructions, we said we don't want any numbers over 20% greater than last year. So we don't want to have anything that's more than 20% of last year. So what we defined is certain rules that'll say if our numbers are between 10 and 20% of last year, make it green. If they're between 10 to 20%, it's going to be yellow. And if it's over 20%, make it red. So when a user is entering data, they can have visual cues to say, okay, you know what, I'm entering numbers that are kind of within our parameters or our guidelines. We can also take this a step further, that we can also invoke our workflow that says, if there's anything in this template that's over 20%, don't even allow it for a submission for approval, because automatically it's going to get rejected. So there's no point wasting people's time. Let's just have the person fix it. Or we can say, just let it go through and then let the manager make a decision on whether they want it to go through or not. Okay. Some other things we do is we also have the ability to do driver-based budgeting. So we can create drivers, whether it's headcount, square footage, number of units, whatever drivers you want. So we don't have to just have financial information. So if you look at this headcount number, that's driving this kitchen and supplies account. And if I look at this account here, it's grayed out, so it means I can't change it. And really what I have is an Excel formula, which is row 23 times $75. So if I go ahead and change this to 100, automatically it'll change it for me. So we can just, have end users just enter drivers. They don't need to know any financial information, and automatically we'll start feeding our models depending on what information they enter. Other features that we have is we've got the ability to attach notes. In Excel, we can attach a note to a cell, but as soon as that gets merged with another spreadsheet, those notes disappear. With TrueSky, we can have unlimited number of notes attached to any cell. And really, it is not a cell. This is more an intersection, which is the office expense budget for 2020, for the Seattle office, for the corporate department, for the supplies hardware account for the month of January. So that basically is going down to that cell level, and these notes will travel with that. So in my scenario, I've got a couple of notes here. If I want to enter a new one, I can just add it, enter my note, as well as I can do attachments. So if there's a business case, a spreadsheet, some reason why you're over budget, whatever, you can put it in notes or attach it. If I look at this one here, I've got a printer that I'm buying, so I've got a copy of a quote. Okay, so anything that you want to attach to the notes, you can attach, and those notes will travel with this document. So with that cell. So no matter where you see that supplies hardware account for the Seattle office, whether it's on any other template, any report, anything else like that, the notes will follow along with it. So it just gives the users information as they're reviewing the numbers. We also have the ability to attach audit trails. So anytime a record gets changed, we basically track the date, who did it, what assignment it was on, and so forth. So anytime we want to see any history for any field, we can go take a look. If I like a particular number better, let's say I like this number better, I can always bring it back. Okay, so you got full audit trail of everything that ever happened in the system. Something else that we have that's a bit unique is we've got the ability to link into other systems. So over here, I've got my actuals for last year. Now, if I want to drill down into that data, I can just click on it. I can go to what we call our links. And our links allow us to basically do a call into either X3 or Sage 300. And what we're doing here, we're actually doing a live query into the data and pulling back whatever information we define. So in my scenario here, I'm bringing back some, all of the invoices. So all the purchase amounts, purchase orders, vendors, PO numbers, invoice dates, receipt dates, payment dates, whatever information we want to define, we can bring in from Sage 300 or Sage X3, and this is live right up to the minute. So what this allows me to do, once I bring that data in, we can start manipulating it. So I can say, sort this from high to low or from low to high. I can say, just show me my top 10 transactions. So if I'm budgeting for a certain jail account, I can say, what are my top 10 transactions? What is the value of that? it's $25,000. So just quickly, I can kind of start playing around with numbers. So I can clear that out and clear this out. The other thing I can do is I can kind of start sorting it in different ways. I don't like this view, but I want to group this maybe by account name and maybe bring in my vendor. So now this has sorted up by GL account name. And if I drill down further, so if I look at my supply software account, it'll break it up by vendor. So I can now start analyzing it by vendor. I can see there's a couple of transactions for mobile warehouse. Something doesn't look right there, so I'm going to click on that. And basically showing me, okay, there were 2 transactions, 2 GL transactions. One was for an office upgrade, which is okay, but the other one is for a tablet purchase that got purchased, posted to the wrong account. Okay, so when I'm analyzing my numbers, whether I'm doing a budget or whether I'm comparing my budget versus actuals, I can go drill down into my ERP system and see the transactions down to whatever level I want. So it gives the users a lot of access to a lot of information that they can have. Some of the other things we can do with our links is we can pretty well tie into anything. If you're doing compensation and you've got a table somewhere or a report somewhere that basically tells you, here's all my levels and here's all my department levels and my breakdowns and here's all my benefit calculations and so forth, we can actually do a call into that and take a look. If you want to open up a new GL account, somebody requests a GL account, they can click on that and that'll open up email and it'll say, I would like to request the following account for this location, for this department and so forth. Okay, so we can tie in pretty well anything that a user needs in our links to make it easier for them to budget. So the idea behind this is that we don't want them to leave this one space. Whatever information we want to provide them that they need, we make it available for them. Okay. We've also got the ability to do what we call line item details. If you look at certain accounts, like let's say employee training, typically employee training is tracked at the GL level for the corporate department, but behind it there's usually either a spreadsheet or some other system that's kind of tracking the buildup of that employee training. So in our scenario, what we can do is we can actually build it up within our own templates, and that'll roll through with everything. So I can say, okay, you know what, I'm going to add another person to my training, or another training course. I'm going to do some training for George. And if I start entering my numbers, it'll start to build them up for me. So again, anywhere I see this employee training account, I'll be able to see that drill down information. So 6 months from now, when I'm comparing my budget versus actuals, I can open it up and say, okay, well, you know what? I ended up, I'm over budget because I had 3 people set up for training, but I trained a 4th, or vice versa. So we can start building up the numbers and taking all that information in there. We also have the ability to attach, graphs. So as a user is entering data, they can build up their own graphs and kind of see how they compare to last year or whatever we want to do. Okay. Okay, so that gives us a little bit of the look and feel of the software. Again, we tried to make it as simple as possible for people to enter information. We control everything they do. We can, basically say, okay, you're only going to enter information in a yellow shaded cell, so they can't do anything they're not supposed to. We're giving them visual cues to make sure that the numbers are in line with what we're looking for. And then we're giving them a whole bunch of tools and audit trails to help the budgeting process easier. So now I'm just going to go ahead and move over to some of the reporting. So over here, I'm just going to pop over to my report, and this is really an income statement. And this is an income statement for my Seattle office, for my corporate department in US dollars. As you see, again, we're Excel based. So the same tool that we use for building templates is the same tool that we use for building our reports. So, the administrators only need to know one tool to basically build and manage the whole system. Over here, I've got a high-level income statement. We can do balance sheets, we can do cash flows. We can pretty well report on any information that's in our database. So right now, I've got this high-level income statement. If I want, I can kind of start expanding it, and I can bring it up by product group. I can expand it further, or bring it up by GL account. If I look at my cost of sales, the same. If I look at my expenses, again, we can start breaking it up into as much detail or show it in summary as possible. If I expand my actuals, over here I've got my actuals for the first 9 months, and I've got my budget for the next 3 months. Excuse me for a sec. So we can create what we call rolling forecasts, and the system will automatically has time intelligence built into it that we say as soon as we close off the month of October, bring in the actuals, and then just show the budget for November and December. So as we start to go through our yearly cycle, the system will automatically create these reports without having to do anything. If I keep expanding this further out, I've got my budgets for, I've got my variances, and I've got my actuals for the prior year. So again, we can, create as many columns as we want. We're just kind of constrained by Excel. If we want to have, department 1, department 2, department 3, or company 1, company 2, company 3, we can define all those reports and build them in any kind of format that you like. We also have the ability to, put in calculations for ratios and things like that to make sure that, you've got whatever information you need. And we've also got the ability to attach links to this, so if I want to drill down into that information, I can just click on my link and I can actually start drilling down into my, X3 or Sage 300 product. Or if I want to drill into other applications, I can do that as well. So, if you've got an HR application or if you've got a point of sale or some other kind of database that you need to get information from, we can bring that in and drill down into that as well. Okay. Something else that we can do as well, we've got the ability to do what we call our what if analysis. And this is really, kind of some of the dashboarding that we have. We basically use the dashboarding capabilities of Excel. So again, there's no other tool required to create your own dashboards. And Excel has a whole bunch of different objects in there that you can do, whether it's graphs, line charts, bar charts, and all that kind of stuff. If you are using some of the product for dashboarding, our database is open. So, as long as we provide the security or then they can go in there, get the data and use whatever dashboarding tool you like. So if you're using Power BI or something else, then, you can use that tool as well. But we're finding most of the customers that we're working with are actually using ours because it's Excel and just want to take advantage of the functionality in Excel. So here what we're actually doing kind of an interactive dashboard. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a what if analysis, and I'm going to do this for all my locations, all my departments, and in US dollars. So what we're doing here is we've got some simple dashboards for revenue, compensation, expense, and net income. But now I can start playing around with this. What would happen if my revenue goes up by, let's say, 40% in May? Okay. So I'm going to have to adjust my compensation. So that's also going to increase, but I'm going to increase that by 10%, and I'm going to do that in March. Just do it a couple months before I'm going to start hiring people to make sure I can manage that increase in revenue. And also my expenses are going to go up by another 10%, and that's going to really happen in February. Okay, so over here I've got some what if analysis, and I can say, okay, what is actually the impact of all this? So I can say, okay, what is the impact on my net income? I can basically graph it out, and over here I've got my numbers, right? So I can see, okay, what happens if I start making those changes? And I can kind of do a whole bunch of what if analysis and start playing around with my numbers and seeing what the impact is. And if I want to, I can actually go back and post these what if and create multiple scenarios. So we can have multiple scenarios and multiple budgets and track them independently. So we've got multiple levels that we can do. Okay, and then we can create any kind of dashboard, whether it's a financial dashboard, HR dashboards, revenue dashboards, sales dashboards, and so forth. Okay, so that gives you kind of a high-level overview, kind of a very quick summary of our product. Basically, our interface, that's Excel, the look and feel, the ability to generate reports, and the ability to generate all kinds of dashboards. I'm just going to quickly go back to my PowerPoint, and then we'll open it up for questions. So again, just to summarize, what can TrueSky do for you? So we can do budgeting, planning, and forecasting pretty well for any kind of model out there, whether it's a financial budget, compensation budget, sales and revenue forecast, expense budget, operational budget, capital expenditures, and we can also take from one model and move it to another. So we can create the capital expenditure model that will feed the financial model, or we can have your compensation model also feed your financial model. We can also do project costing and revenue budgeting. We have a lot of Sage 300 customers that are using our product for budgeting for projects and as well for the reporting for the project side of things, because we can access not only the financial information, but also the subledgers, as well as production and inventory budgeting. And on the reporting and dashboarding, we can do consolidated budgets, presentation quality statements, all kinds of actual versus budget analysis, and pretty well any kind of KPI or dashboard, as long as the information is in our database. So with TrueSky, you really basically get all the strengths of Excel's, all the flexibility, the ability to model any process, take advantage of the powerful calculation engine that Excel has, the rich presentation layer that it has, so we can, take advantage of everything that Excel is offering, and really provide us with, high user adoption. People like working with Excel. They're used to it. They're used to budgeting in Excel, so we wanted to keep that same interface and same look and feel. But we've added a whole bunch of controls for making sure that everything's in a database. So everything's controlled within our database, that we have workflows, approvals, security, everything's dynamic depending on who the user is and what they're allowed to see. We have full audit trails. We've added a whole bunch of productivity tools. And really a big thing is where we have the ability to integrate to the source data, whether that's Sage 300, Sage X3, or any other systems that you have out there. As long as we can get our hands on it, we can integrate it and do budgeting on it or reporting on it. And then we have this concept of the build once design, which we can create one template and roll it out to 50, 100 people, or multiple people, and depending on their security, the system will automatically generate what they can see and what they can fill in. So ultimately, what we've done is we've taken Excel and turned that into an enterprise solution where we have one version of the truth, everything centralized, actionable information. We're reducing the risk, and we're avoiding surprises. So with that, the next steps for us would be, if you're interested in this, we can provide a more, in-depth demo. We can do a scope review and a proposal. And really, for you, the next steps will be either to contact IWI and or us, and then we'll be able to help you. So with that, what I'd like to do is just open it up for some questions and try and answer them. So if anybody has any questions, you can just put it in the chat, and I'll try and address them.
Yeah, thanks, George. This is Sean. So we do got a couple of questions, and as mentioned, please get your questions in there now, and we can answer them as well. The first question is, what is your licensing model? Okay,
we've got two models. We've got a perpetual licensing model and we've got a subscription licensing model. And really, our model is very simple. We've got 3 SKUs. So we've got what we call a full-blown user, which is a user that basically has access to everything and enters information. We've got a review-only user, which is basically somebody like a manager that'll review and do reports. And then we have a reporting-only user. That's a user that doesn't enter any, just get reports, whether they're a manager or something like that.
Okay, thank you. Can you talk a bit more about the integration with Sage 300 in particular?
Yeah, we've got a very strong integration with Sage 300 and with X3. Our background actually came from the consulting world, so we understand integrations really, really well. And we'll integrate at multiple levels. We've got an out-of-the-box integration into the GL, but we can also integrate to the subledgers. On the GL side, we'll bring in, obviously your chart of accounts, and then we bring in all the transactions. But on top of that, we also have our integration that basically if you add a new GL account in Sage 300, or if you add a new department, it will automatically be added into TrueSky as well. The integration is built so that it runs automatic in the background. You can schedule it, either nightly, hourly, weekly, however you want to do it. But we also allow you to do a manual override whenever you need to do a manual integration. So, for example, if you enter some certain transactions into say 300, and you want it to show up in TrueSky, then we can run that also on a manual basis. Most customers run it on a nightly basis, because that's for budgeting, that's usually enough. But we can schedule it at any level that you want. But the big thing that we are a bit different than most budgeting tools out there is that our integration is seamless, and that we actually start, whenever you add something in, say, 300 or X3, we'll automatically make sure that it's synchronized to TrueSky, so that you don't have to reconcile, two different systems whenever you add an account or make a change in your ERP system.
Okay, thank you. And I have another question here. Can TrueSky be deployed in the cloud?
Yes. We also give you flexibility how you want to deploy it. So we can deploy it in the cloud, whether that's a public cloud on Azure, if you've got your own private cloud, or we can do it on premise. So again, we give customers a choice on deployment options.
Okay, perfect. I think that is it for the questions. So on behalf of IWI, George, we appreciate you presenting the TrueSky budgeting and planning tool. And we'd like to thank all the attendees for reaching out and attending the webinar. And what we'll do is we will follow up with each of you and answer any specific questions you may have, or you have our contact information. You can feel free to reach out to your account manager. Okay, thanks again, everybody, and have a great day.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.